Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Could you start by telling us your name and your branch of service?
Okay, my name is Ralph Boone Mullins. I was in the United States Air Force.
Yeah. And when did you serve?
I was 1952 to 56.
Okay. What is your connection to Southwest Virginia?
I was raised in here. I guess that's
Yeah. Where were you raised?
in Tazewell County.
Tazewell County. Did you go to high school
I
there?
went to high school, to Tazewell High School. That's where I got my nickname, Moon Mullins. I played football for the Tazewell, and I played fullback. Another boy played quarterback, and they called him KO, which was back in them days. And I was Moon. And they, from that time on, all my mail, I say 65% of my mail comes Moon Mullins. Nobody knows me by Moon Mullins. I also, when I came back out of service, I met my wife. We were married for 67 years. I had a little old service station. I met her there. And then during the time there, after I left there, I went to work at, when I came back from the Air Force, I went to work at the service station. Then I worked for Island Creek Coal Company. And I retired from Island Creek Coal Company. Then I in turn worked for Miners Oil as a consultant. After then, I started the Good Samaritan Food Pantry in Richland, which at one time we had 31 churches. We still operating. I'm still a director of it. And I belong to the Appalachian Agency of Senior Citizens. I belong to Virginia Mine Institute. I belong to I'm a Shriner. I'm a Mason. And the good Lord has blessed me with I've been able to do all those things.
Could you tell me about when you first went into the military? How did you go in? What happened?
Well, I knew you got drafted when I went. Anyway, I knew I was going to be drafted, so I joined the Air Force on Friday and left on Saturday with the Air Force. And in turn, we went to Sampson Air Force Base, which was a new base for the Air Force during the Korean War. And we was a Navy base. Well, we had the first ones was there. So you can figure what we had to do. We had to clean it and do all this stuff. And that's where I took my basic. From there, I went to Portland, Oregon. And from Portland, Oregon, I went to Tokyo. And I was in 6,000 Base Service Group, 5th Air Force, stationed at the New Kaijo Hotel downtown Tokyo. And during the time for then, I traveled to Korea and back with the work I did. I had to go backwards and forwards there.
What kind of work did you do there?
Well, I was in the accounting department, really, I guess you would call it finances, and had to take payrolls to Tokyo, to Korea, and different things like that. We also, we handled all the expenses of everything that was expended in food or anything that was bought. It came through us.
So you've told us a little bit about some of the places. Were there any other places that you lived while you were in the military?
They sent me from Sampson Air Force to Portland on a train. Okay. And that's where the first hour I was in the accounting department there. Then I left from there, and we went from there. I stopped at Wake Island because we had a motor go out on a plane, and we had to stay all night in Wake Island. Then we went to Tokyo, and then from Tokyo, I was supposed to come back on a plane, but I wanted to. I was going to stay in the Air Force, and I wanted, when you first went in service, you had a folder. There's that long, that big full of papers. Well, when I come out, you had a little card with old spots. Well, that's what I wanted to get into. They said, okay, we're going to, and then they said, we don't have any openings. You'll have to keep staying your field. So I said, I'm not going to reenlist. So they sent me back on the USS Almond with 17 days coming back to the United States. And I was in Frisco when I got discharged.
Okay. Um, when you were in these other places, how did you stay in touch with your friends and family?
Well, most of the time I stayed in touch with a letter. That's about all you had. You did, if you made it very, very seldom you could make a phone call, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There were really wasn't no phones. A lot of things that we done, I stayed in touch with. We wrote letters about. I got a letter about every day during the time, and
Mm-hmm.
I, as far as we'd go to, if you went to the PX or whatever, then you could. They had a phone. You could call if you had the money to call. That's the main thing because the money wasn't real good.
Could you share with us a story about your time in service? You think of a story of something maybe while you were in Korea when you were doing the payroll thing, something interesting that happened to you.
I guess the funniest thing that happened to me, really the strangest thing that happened to me, I was when we was in Tokyo. We had to pay all the bills for all the the everything that was purchased. It went through us, and I think the funniest thing was that is I had this sergeant was over me at that time, and he kept saying, cause I was from Virginia, an old country boy, he'd say, how do you know how to do this stuff? He'd always say, how do you know to do this? How do you? I said, I went to Tazewell High School. That's why I can do this. But he was quite a character, and the funniest things happened one night. They called us all out, loaded us up on a bus, took us down to the airport. We got we got on the plane. They said, this is just a experience for if you going there, what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
So it was that was really scary because really I had never been on combat. So
Mm-hmm. Okay. And finally, what message would you pass on to the next generation about military service? What would you tell young people?
I would say one thing today that happens in our country today, our young generation, you know, we they're just not like they they need to have the draft again. Sometimes if they had to go back in service, it'll make a man. I know I was an old country boy that didn't know anything about anything. Never was. When I graduated from high school, we had, like I said, we had a path and a well and no power, no nothing when I graduated from Tazewell High School. And I said, today the kids don't realize how hard it was back in them days. Today they got everything give to them. You give to you. I think maybe if Uncle Sam would say we have a draft again, I think
Well, that's all my questions. Is there anything else you want to tell us about?
we went to Wake Island when with the planes at Wake Island. They let us all off. Man, you got to know how hot it is in the middle of Wake Island. Well, the tanks and everything was there just like war, Second World War. Then, well, they told us that you can't go swimming unless you got swimmer trunks. Well, you see them everywhere, I think that was really one comical thing that happened in my time.
Did you go swimming?
Oh yeah, I went swimming. Yeah, I went swimming. But there was so many things. Another thing, and I think it happened. I'll have to tell you this. Me and my wife, I guess we danced everywhere in the country where we love to dance. Well, when I first went in service, when I went to Portland, I got stationed in Portland, everybody was going out of the night, going dancing. Well, I was an old country boy. I never hit a lick at nothing. But so they had a sign up one day on there said, dance in, lessons at Arthur Murray's day studio. So I went to Arthur Murray. And I said that was really the only thing. And excuse me, that I got out of the service. I got my learned how to dance.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.